We see here in Deuteronomy 15:11, KJV, "For the poor shall never cease out of the land. Therefore I command thee, saying, Thou shalt open thine hand wide unto thy brother, to thy poor and to thy needy in thy land." Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope you're doing well. So Elijah Schaffer here is revealing day by day how much disdain he has for us Muslims. He says here, "This isn't a third world country. This is the state of Michigan. We are losing our great country to madness. Sleeper cells of extremists are brewing. And what are our politicians doing? Letting them multiply. The U.S. will never be a Muslim country." So, okay, let's break this down. Third world country. Time and time again, I'm noticing American Christians spitting upon people below them. They just are so classicist, and I get that can sound pretty Marxist. But notice how the Bible talks about treating the needy well, that if you're having a banquet or a feast, you should invite the crippled, those who are hungry, and you don't see them focusing on those Bible verses. It's a constant flex of F the third world, when in reality, Elijah had no control over where his mother gave birth. The creator and sustainer of the universe allowed Elijah to be born in a first world country. And further, the entire earth is filled with collapsed civilizations, their ruins, all of it. And we have to understand that America could easily turn into a third world country. We have quite corrupt politicians who despise us, a very sickly population that is growing, and we shouldn't be overly arrogant and haughty about our positions. I like how in the Quran it talks about those who built their homes in the mountain and they were still rent asunder. And when you look at Noah, may Allah be pleased with him, Allah flooded the earth. People probably thought nothing would ever happen to us, and boom, Allah wiped it clean. So, any empire can rise and fall. I remember one time there was someone who had posted a video of some heavily polluted river, and I called it a shithole. And my friend's mom, who's a very humble lady, she said, "You still shouldn't insult where they live." And she reprimanded me. This was years ago, probably about 9 years ago, but I still remember it from time to time, and I'm like, yeah, I could have just criticized the government for not fixing pollution. I shouldn't have just insulted where they live, because it doesn't do any service to kick someone when they're down. Further, he says, "We're losing our great country to madness." Islam to me doesn't bring madness. It brings actual conservatism, actual gender roles, stability, eradicates gambling and the brothel culture and hookup culture, will rid the streets of intoxicants, will wipe out the gangs, all that. So, how will it wipe out the gangs? Is because it'll be haram, and Islam promotes a different type of masculinity. And I understand that there are some bad people who identify as Muslims and create gangs, but at the same time, there's tons of Catholics who are in the mafia and cartels. So if we're going to play that game, let's play it right, alright? And Elijah, complains constantly about the degraded women. He admitted several days ago that he's a degenerate. He needs to come to Jesus, he said. He's struggling, and he has a very gluttonous and licentious lifestyle. He says this himself, okay? Now, he says something here that conservatives love to say when they get all spooky. Remember how, was it like a week ago, I did the courage meme with Eustace puts on the ooga booga booga mask to scare the dog Courage. About how if you say Sharia law, this makes like afraid little old ladies hand over cash to a corrupt politician, campaign fund. The same word that Fox News loves to use is sleeper cells. Oh, they're coming. Booga, 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 booga. Meanwhile, you already have citizen gangs and corrupt politicians doing plenty of damage. But they gotta have this non-existent Muslim coming out of the woodwork and being like, booga, booga, booga. It makes people afraid. The Republican Christians mock liberals for saying fascism and Nazism, all that. But if you pay attention to the rhetoric of the right wing, such as what Elijah Schaffer is doing, they talk about sleeper cells all the time. They're not even mentioning like the Christians who have rosary tattoos, Virgin of Guadalupe tattoos, Virgin Mary tattoos, Jesus praying hand tattoos. You have tons of people who are in prison who have Christian tattoos and have committed atrocious crimes, and you have priests and different elements within churches where little boys are being harmed, and they don't really focus on that. They don't know how to clean their own house. It's always scapegoating Muslims for problems. Sleeper cells of extremists and say they're brewing, like a witch's cauldron. As bubble and bubble, toil and trouble, here comes the Muslims. It's absolutely crazy, when the liberals are having a nudist bicycle parade, Christians focusing on that, not really. Gay pride parades have kink in it, and there's spanking and furry play, all kinds of weird shenanigans. Elijah's not really doing much about that. But he's gotta amplify sleeper cells. And he conflates Muslims who practice openly their faith as extremists. And then he says the U.S. will never be a Muslim country. You can't predict that. See, these people are heretics. I would never say this will never happen if I'm not being facetious. Like, never say never is a cliche in America. I get it. There's been times where I'm like, oh, that'll never happen. I'll never like that chocolate. Or I'll never like that dinner plate. Or like we joke and we say it in a softer way. But when you're talking about destiny, like the fortune, an end result, a consequence, you can't predict the future. You're not a soothsayer. You're not some jinn master. And even then, that would still have a bunch of lies mixed in, as we know. Those fortune tellers and those mystics, they tell you one truth and sprinkle in a bunch of lies. And if you go to them, your prayers won't be accepted for quite some time. 30 days, I believe. 30 to 40 days, I believe Sheikh Hasim Al-Hakim said. But the point is, he cannot control the destiny of America. Nobody can. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can control what happens to America and what countries will become Islamic. Elijah Schaffer, claiming to be a Christian, thinks that he can tell God what's going to happen. That he can tell God, hey, you can't make America Islamic. Think about that. I find that quite bizarre, because their God has already allowed countries to become Islamic. Who says what the destiny of America will be? And America isn't like the 17th century or the 18th century anymore. So who's to say in the 20th century and going on from there that America will not adopt more modest clothing like us Muslims have? That more people will see the superior masculinity of Islam and want to be part of it? Think about it. He doesn't know the future, but he contends that he's able to say with confidence what will happen. Americanistan will make America better. The Babylonian essence that America has right now, of abortions reaching up to over 1 million in 2023, massive amounts of drug users, broken homes, all the decay, that is already showing that America has subdued itself to madness, not caused by Islam. In fact, America has sucked dry the tax revenue of its peoples, not giving them health care, not giving them tuition-free college, okay, but has funded a war in Afghanistan, and Trump said he wants to go back to capture a military base there. After 20 years of failure and millions of dollars wasted, Trump wants to go back and use the money towards that, while his big, beautiful bill is called Cut Free School Lunch Programs for Children. Look it up. And cut SNAP benefits, which is food. Nothing pisses off a Christian more in MAGA than people getting food when they're poor. Give someone rice and beans, maybe a little Takis, to have some little treat. That pisses them off to no end. Even though the Bible says you should feed the needy, care for the needy, give them a leg up, don't kick them when they're down. No, not MAGA Christians. They only care about first world whites. And this is something quite sad, unfortunately. Elijah Schaffer is contradicting himself in a number of ways. Pretending he can tell the future, that he can tell God what is the destiny of America, as if he has insider knowledge. He 1 minute complains about the degeneracy and decay in America, and then turns around and says, this isn't a third world country. So he looks down on his fellow Christians who are from the third world, and he thinks the government shouldn't have the First Amendment, letting them multiply. You don't get to decide who converts to what religion, and you cannot just persecute one religion. Ironically, America only protects one religion, and we all know which one that is. And it's deeply unfair. Okay? Deeply unfair, because that's not a very free market. It seems to be a lot of censorship going on with the sale of TikTok and all that. Again, we can see the hypocrisy of the MAGA Christians and the modern American Christians. They think they're better than everyone because they're their skin shade, where they're born. They think they're very superior, they're haughty, they're arrogant, they got massive ego, and they assume they will never slide into the bottom of the pyramid with us plebs again, and they equate excited, enthusiastic Muslims as sleeper cells of extremism. Very crazy. Very crazy. Let me know what you think. Please like, comment, subscribe. Join the blog. One more thing about his post is that it does appear that this is a Shia festival. Not 100% sure on that, but either way, there isn't some type of sleeper cell going on with their little parade. And again, Muslims are not a huge part of the population. Case in point, it's 2.4% of the state's population. Elijah Schaffer is shaken in his boots by less than 3% of the population being Muslim. Oh, it's really funny.